All right, so let's take a deep dive into this whole Mitch McConnell thing.
Yeah.
His fall at that Senate GOP lunch.
Yeah.
We've got breaking news from Politico and U.S. News, and to really get a feel for how this is landing out there, we're also going to look at a Reddit thread that's gotten pretty lively.
Oh, wow.
So what are your first thoughts? What jumps out at you from all this?
Well, from the news, we get the immediate aftermath.
Yeah.
McConnell's 82. He tripped, got a cut on his face, sprained his wrist. But the good news is he's been cleared to go back to work. But what's interesting is that Reddit thread is revealing kind of another whole dimension to this story.
It's not just about the fall, right? It seems like the Redditors are kind of connecting this to like this bigger anxiety about older politicians in general. There's one comment I saw that it said, having leaders McConnell's age is a threat to political stability.
Wow.
So it's almost like this fall is triggering this dominant effect.
Yeah.
Bringing up all these deeper issues.
Well, and adding fuel to that fire. This isn't even McConnell's first health scare this year.
Right.
Back in March, he had that concussion from another fall.
Oh, yeah.
And then there were those couple times where he seemed to freeze mid-sentence during those press conferences.
Right, right.
So it's understandable why people are starting to connect the dots.
Yeah, and what I find really fascinating here is that it's not just, the pundits or the political insiders talking about this.
Right.
It's like everyday people on Reddit.
Right.
Voicing these concerns.
Yeah, it shows just how widespread this anxiety is.
Yeah.
And it goes beyond just McConnell.
Yeah.
There are comments in that thread about Biden's age and Trump's age, too.
Oh, absolutely. I saw a few of those.
This is clearly a bipartisan concern.
Yeah, it's not limited to any one party.
Right.
It's interesting, though, because if everyone seems to be thinking it, why hasn't there been more action on this whole issue of, aging politicians?
That's the million-dollar question. McConnell's situation is kind of a microcosm of this much larger debate about term limits and age limits for political office. It's been simmering for years, but despite this very real public concern, we haven't seen any serious movement towards any change.
So everyone's thinking it, but no one's acting on it.
Yeah.
It's almost like this stalemate.
It is.
And speaking of McConnell's future, one article mentioned he's been coy about whether he'll run again in 2026.
Yeah.
Now, for those of us who don't speak Politico, what does coy really mean here?
He's basically being evasive, neither confirming nor denying, so it keeps everyone guessing.
Okay.
And, considering this recent fall and his other health challenges,
Right.
It's only natural to wonder if those will play a part in his decision.
Yeah, and the timing is certainly interesting, because on top of all that, he was just replaced as GOP leader by John Thune last month.
Right.
So you've got this fall, his health, the leadership change. It all seems to be happening at like this really pivotal moment, both for him and the Republican Party as a whole.
Absolutely.
Where do you see this all going? Look, what are your initial thoughts on how this might all play out?
Well, it's still early to say, for sure. But I think this situation has the potential to really reshape the landscape of the Republican Party.
Yeah.
I mean, McConnell's been such a dominant force for decades.
Right.
He's wielded so much power and influence.
Yeah.
So his potential departure, whether it's due to his health or just by choice, it could create this real power vacuum.
So we're looking at a potential period of uncertainty and reshuffling within the GOP then.
Yeah.
Especially with the 2026 elections coming up.
Right.
This one fall could end up having this huge impact
Absolutely.
on the future of the party.
Yeah.
This is where things get really interesting. What do you think are the biggest questions we should be asking right now?
Yeah.
About the future of the Republican Party in light of all of this?
I think we have to consider who might step into McConnell's shoes. If not Thune, then who? What kind of power struggles might we see emerge? And of course, how's this all going to affect their strategy for that 2026 election?
Right.
These are all questions we'll be digging into.
This is why we do these deep dives. You never know where a story will lead.
Exactly.
What started as a simple report about a fall has now blown up into this whole conversation about the future of the Republican Party.
Absolutely.
It's fascinating.
It is. Before we get too far into the implications for the Republicans, I think we need to step back and just acknowledge how people are feeling about all of this.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about the anxieties around, aging politicians.
Right.
But the Reddit thread, I think, reveals even a deeper layer to that.
Yeah, you're right. There's a lot more going on there than just like, oh, politicians are getting old.
Right.
So there's this almost like this urgent tone to some of these comments.
Yeah.
Like, this is a problem we need to deal with now.
Yeah. And what's striking is how this one incident with McConnell seems to have tapped into this much broader societal anxiety. It's almost like his fall is this metaphor for a larger vulnerability that people are feeling.
Right.
I mean, the world feels so unpredictable right now, so volatile.
Yeah.
And people are looking to their leaders for stability.
Right.
And so when those leaders themselves start to appear vulnerable, it really shakes that sense of security.
It makes you think, and it's not just physical vulnerability either.
Right.
I mean, we've seen McConnell seemingly lose his train of thought. Those moments of what some people are calling cognitive freezing.
Yeah.
Regardless of your political leanings, that's got to raise some concerns.
Absolutely. Those incidents raise questions about cognitive fitness, the ability to make sound judgments, especially under pressure.
Yeah.
And those are qualities that we expect from any leader,
right,
especially in high-stakes political roles.
But here's where it gets even more interesting to me. Because while you have all this worry about age and health,
right,
the Reddit thread also has this pushback against the idea of age limits.
Right.
One comment said age is just a number. What matters is experience and competence. So how do we reconcile these two seemingly opposite viewpoints?
Well, that's the dilemma, isn't it?
Yeah.
We recognize that age can bring wisdom and experience and, a deep understanding of these complex issues.
Right, years of experience.
Right. But at the same time, there's no denying that age can also bring physical and cognitive decline. And that decline can impact a leader's ability to do their job effectively.
Absolutely.
So finding the right balance is tricky.
It feels like that balancing act is only getting harder as our society faces these increasingly complex challenges.
It is.
And it's not even just limited to politics. We see this with CEOs, Supreme Court justices. There's this growing awareness that we need leaders who are not just experienced, but also physically and mentally up to the task.
Yeah, you've hit on a crucial point. I think this conversation extends far beyond just Congress.
Yeah.
It's about making sure that the people we entrust with power in any field are equipped to handle the complexities of our world.
Right.
It demands a nuanced approach.
Yeah.
One that weighs, the benefits of experience against the potential drawbacks of aging.
It's like we need a new framework for evaluating leadership.
Yes.
One that goes beyond just looking at a resume or someone's age.
Exactly.
We need to assess their cognitive agility, their ability to adapt, their resilience under stress. I think those are the qualities that are going to define successful leaders in the 21st century.
Absolutely. This conversation is long overdue. We need to move past the superficial and start asking those tough questions.
Right.
What really defines leadership today? What are those essential qualities? And how do we ensure that they're present, regardless of age or experience?
And it feels like this is a conversation that is especially important now. As the demographics of our society continue to shift, we need to be thinking about succession planning.
Yes.
Mentoring the next generation of leaders.
Absolutely.
And creating a culture that values both experience and fresh perspectives.
And doing all of that in a way that's respectful and inclusive, because leadership potential can come from people of all ages and all backgrounds.
Right.
It's about creating a system for those smooth transitions of power, ensuring that there's a pipeline of capable leaders ready to step up.
Yeah.
That's how we build a resilient society that's prepared for whatever comes next.
Well said. It's amazing how this seemingly minor incident, McConnell's fall, has opened up this Pandora's box of questions.
It has.
About leadership age, the future of American politics. It's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
And honestly, it can feel a little overwhelming.
It can.
So where do we even begin to address these complex issues?
Well, I think it starts with awareness. Acknowledging the challenges and having those open and honest conversations about them. We need to move past the partisan bickering.
Yeah.
And recognize that this is an issue that affects us all.
I think you're right. It's about finding that common ground, you know, and working together to create a system that really puts the country's best interests first.
Right.
Maybe this whole thing with McConnell can be a wake-up call.
I hope so.
You know, the thing that finally gets that conversation about leadership going.
Yeah, a real national conversation.
Yeah.
We need to be asking ourselves, like, what kind of leadership do we want for America? What qualities matter most? And how do age and health fit into all of that?
Yeah.
It's not easy.
No.
But we can't afford to ignore it.
And it's important to remember that we're not just talking about these abstract concepts here.
Right.
These are real people.
Yeah.
You know, individuals who have dedicated themselves to public service.
Absolutely.
So we need to approach this conversation with a sense of, you know, empathy and respect, recognizing that there are complexities and nuances involved.
It's about striking that balance.
Right.
We can acknowledge the challenges that might come with aging leadership, but still value the wisdom and experience and knowledge that those leaders bring to the table.
It's a tough balance, for sure.
It is.
But it's one we got to figure out if we want America to have, you know, strong and capable leadership going forward.
Absolutely.
This brings us full circle back to that Reddit thread.
Right.
All those comments from everyday people expressing their concerns.
Yeah.
This isn't just some theoretical debate happening in ivory towers or whatever.
Right.
This is something that real Americans are worried about.
Yeah, and those voices deserve to be heard.
Yeah.
This whole McConnell thing has clearly struck a nerve, and we've got to keep this conversation going.
Yeah, it's time to move past those partisan lines.
Yeah.
You know, and engage in a thoughtful and constructive dialogue.
Exactly.
About what we want leadership in this country to look like.
Right.
So to everyone listening, we encourage you to keep exploring this topic.
Yeah.
Check out the links to the sources we mentioned. Read up on the debates around term limits and age limits.
Yeah.
But most importantly, share your thoughts.
Right.
Your perspectives. Because this is a conversation that affects us all.
It does.
Your voices need to be heard.
This whole situation really makes you think about those qualities and capabilities we need in our leaders and how age and health factor in.
Yeah.
Something for all of us to ponder.
That's a great point to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
You're welcome.
Until next time, stay curious.
Okay.